Hey, what's up? This is your girl, Taylor Wilde. Welcome back to Wilde On, Season 4, the podcast where you get the insider's view of the weird, wonderful, wild world of wrestling. On Wednesdays, today's guest is a wild card. Yes, cheesy pun intended. He is a semi-retired professional hockey player, a real estate developer, a fellow Toronto dweller, and he is soon to be hosting his very own podcast. He is, however, the quintessential red flag Toronto babe. Just my type. Ladies and gentlemen, my man, Jesse Michel. Well, thank you for taking the time to do my podcast.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Okay. Is it Michael or Michelle? Because I totally panicked doing your intro.
I get Michael. I get Mitchell. Michelle is technically the correct one, but okay. I've learned to say yes to any of them.
Okay.
Or I get the very classic, very fancy sounding Michel.
Oh, Michel.
That one, that's grown on me.
Okay, Michel it is.
Sure, because I'm like, ooh, okay, it could be Jesse Michel, not just Jesse Michel. It just sounds, it's more French and more,
I was going to say,
exotic.
Are you French? Do you have French?
So I'm Dutch, Italian, German, British, and French.
Okay. Because I'm Chantal, but no correlation to being French. So no, I'm like Polish Canadian, but I
there
don't
you
like
go.
The name. So you win.
Good stock.
You win that round.
I look like everything. It's fantastic, but it's also horrible because when I travel, everyone speaks to me in their native language.
Oh.
Except for Asia. But,
Get the fuck out. They don't think you're Asian.
I know, that racist, right? I mean, so much prejudice.
Totally.
But like I used to play hockey in Sweden, and though I'm dark, there's like a lot of obviously mixed people in Sweden, so people would always speak to me in Swedish first. But I had American teammates, and it was so obvious that they were American that they wouldn't even try Swedish with them. And then even when being in Israel, right? Because like I'm a darker complexion person, so a lot of people are like, yeah, you look like you're probably like half Arab, and I'm like, I could be. Sure, I'll go for it. That's a compliment. I had an interesting experience during COVID. So I don't call 911 very often. I don't have a reason to. But if I ever see something that's really off, I'll call. So I was driving downtown and I was on Lakeshore, just underneath the Gardner. And there was somebody walking up the middle of Lakeshore in the middle of the road in the middle of the night. Kind of in a potential drunken stupor, and don't ask me why I could tell this, but they were disheveled, and it looked like maybe they were depressed. It was just how they were carrying themselves. So I called 911. I said, "Hey, I'd hate to wake up in the morning and see on the news that someone got hit. Who knows what this person's intention are? Maybe they're just being drunk and stupid, or maybe they're contemplating something more serious." So I called 911, and the girl was like, "Hey, 911, what's your emergency?" I said, "Hey, I'm just calling as a precaution. There's someone, I think they're drunk, maybe they're depressed. I have no idea, but who walks up the middle of Lakeshore in the middle of the night? I just want to make sure that they're safe." And then she's like, well, instead of like, I understand you have to ask questions, but she's like, how do you know they're depressed? And then I'm like, oh, like, I don't actually know. Like, I'm just making some assessments based off a few seconds of seeing them.
Right.
I just want to make sure, it's more, I guess, in some ways, potentially a mental wellness check.
Sure.
And she went on like berating me for like 3 minutes about the call. And I'm like, hey, like, I just want to make sure that you sent someone out. Like I could be totally wrong. If you guys are busy, I apologize. Like, I'm not an expert on what to do when you call 911. I told her this. And then she was acting like I was being the rude one. And I was like,
oh no.
I'm sure 99% of calls that go very, very well. Maybe this person was having an off night. I know it's a very stressful job.
That shouldn't be the response. And like, even if there is burnout, which there is tons of burnout on the job, especially post COVID,
100%.
That's not the way to handle it. But
yeah,
you did the right thing, actually. And I was just going to commend you before I was going through my mind about how kind of disgusting that behavior was that you received, because the bystander effect is so real. So many people will see somebody in that kind of situation and it's either like, well, it's none of my business, or person ABC will call 911, and then that's when things go very wrong. And so you did the right thing. Don't let that one person who's having a horrible day ruin it for you. Always call 911.
Yeah.
Like, you did the right thing. So I commend you. I'm sorry, and I commend you.
Pat on my back. There we go. Good job.
Do you feel better? Because I feel better.
Yes, I feel much better now.
Well, I will say, having you on my show, I saw you on another Toronto podcasters show, and technically you are not my typical guest. You are this quintessential like wild card, but my listening audience is 85% male. This podcast is really about female fighters and holding space for women in the sport. However, I think we have a lot of parallels in our career, just in different sports, because I was a retired professional wrestler who then found a big girl job and then went back to the sport. And that's what you've done, right? You were a professional hockey player at 18, is that correct? And then you went off into the world of real estate, but yours was ended because of an injury, is that correct?
Yes. So the first thing I'll say is it's a surprise to me. I thought I was a WWE fighter. I thought it was Hulk Hogan, but this is all new to me. You've shattered my hopes and dreams.
Sorry, I do that. Okay. I really do. I do.
And then, so I started playing pro at 18 in Sweden. I ripped my ankle, and I was a goaltender, and I was forced into retirement at 20. I stayed around the universe of sports. I always kept in good shape. I took some time away from hockey, and I missed the sport, but I couldn't play my position anymore. So I started playing forward and defense because it didn't require the same stress on the same parts of my body. And I'm a big guy, and I'm decent at hockey. Just they like me more so for my hitting and my fighting than anything else.
Hey, we all have our strengths. I didn't get hired because I was really smart, so it's fine.
That's how it goes. So, I end up having some interesting opportunities because I was rowing. I always did rowing as cross training. And during COVID, I unintentionally broke the 2,000 meter indoor record unofficially. I didn't videotape it at the time. And then I went to go videotape it. And I ended up snapping my leg in two as I was getting ready to transition to a professional football career in Australia.
Shit.
So that took 2 years and 3 surgeries, reconstructive. Plate went in, screws went in, screws came out, plate came out.
Oh, so you're fun at the airport.
Everything is out now. I have no plate anymore. I have no screws anymore. So we're good. I can get through. I didn't mind the additional pat downs.
COVID was lonely. I hear you.
Yeah, it's like we all need a gentle touch of a handsome gentleman or lady or non-binary person.
You're so inclusive.
So I try to be. I really try. And then, then I end up having this opportunity once my leg had healed to go back and play hockey. And I played in Israel. I won a silver medal there. And I just announced actually earlier today that I'm returning back to hockey. I thought this was going to be my last season. But I've signed in the National League in Spain. I've had some interest coming from Germany and France and North America, but it's in the middle of wine country in Spain. I think I'm about 45 minutes from the Pyrenees Mountains.
Fucking terrible. God.
Yeah. So
what a choice.
I thought to myself, from a lifestyle perspective, when am I ever going to get the chance to go live in wine country in Spain? Sure. So I said, you know what? Let's do it. I'm still doing real estate. We're quite busy. I'm actually in one of the offices of the home that I'm in the middle of developing, which will be going up on the market for around $5.5 million. It's a 6,500 square foot French chateau on 17 acres with 2,500 square foot of additional deck.
A deal.
So I had some plants in the house and I brought them down here to give more of like a Greek god vibe.
And I can tell you're a professional. Excellent staging.
Thank you. And it's a little echoey in here, so I just started grabbing random garbage and throwing it on the floor to try to dampen the sounds. I'm a audio engineer. My friends would be very, very proud of me. Thank you, Daniel Schiffer. Shout out to Daniel Schiffer on YouTube. 2.5 million subs. Taught me everything I know.
I appreciate it. Thank you. My
Anytime. You can tag them in that. Tag them in that.
I will.
And Dan, you better comment below. We're showing you some love. You show this some love.
So having to retire at 20 from basically a career-ending injury, you basically just did this lateral movement where you were going to stay in sport. But how did you stay grounded? How did you not, like, you were basically living the Canadian white male 20 to 35-year-old dream, right? And to have that taken
Yeah.
from you, it's like, our listeners, a lot of my listeners are American, but like that's the dream. That's your identifier. That's who you grew up to be. That's part of who you are. How did you stay grounded? How did you not?
Yeah, I mean, maybe for the context of a lot of Americans, it's almost like imagine being, you're the high school quarterback supposed to go play D1, and you're dating the cheer captain, right? It's basically that. That's the American dream. This is the Canadian dream.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you. I mean, I was super depressed for years.
Sure.
I didn't know how to handle it, and I think the biggest thing was being able to openly admit the mental health challenges that I was going through. You're absolutely right. I was totally defined by my sport, as most athletes are.
Absolutely.
And I was fortunate. I worked some different jobs. I worked in the service industry. I worked at Cabana, and I was doing VIP bottle service there. So like when LeBron James would come in, or Floyd Mayweather Jr., I was assigned to them. And the Cabana boy stuff, mixing them drinks, making them drinks, getting whatever they need. If they saw a pretty girl, hey, I'll go get them for you. Whatever you need a towel, I don't care.
Right.
I had worked in suiting. I had worked in luxury consignment. So I did have to get back to the real world. The sports were always a backdrop, and I just felt like I was going through the motions. But it ultimately was the best thing for me, because you can't live your life with one identifier. We are so many different things. Sure. So there were things I think in my life that I was neglecting. I don't think I was always the best friend. I think I'm a great friend now.
Yeah.
I think I had my moments, but I think that there were definitely times when I was more selfish than I should have been. I don't have a drinking problem by any stretch of the imagination, but I, had to realize at some point the parties were great. At one point when you're playing hockey, and the same time I was playing hockey, I was modeling, and I was going to Italy for modeling, and I was going to Greece for modeling, and it's a reality series, and the parties got so big, and you're trying to chase that dragon.
Yeah. And
I had a night where went out, and it should have been a good night on paper, and I just went home and I cried all night, and I cried in the morning. I said, I can't do this anymore. Oh, no. I was going out 3-4 nights a week. I lived on King Street, Toronto, and for people who don't know, that's like, party, nightclub, food, center of the city.
Yep.
And I had guest list everywhere, and all my friends were promoters. So I got bottle service for free every night. And, it was all masking this sense of longing and this kind of sense of loneliness in a way. Like I had great family and I had great friends, but something was missing from my life. There was a purpose that was missing. And it's okay to stew in that for a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
You collect yourself, you figure out a plan. That's when I got really big into more like self-help stuff. So the first person I started watching, and it's so dumb, I was watching like these YouTubers, you might remember them, you may never even heard of them, called Simple Pickup.
No.
And so there was this whole like pickup dating culture scene for a while on YouTube.
Okay.
Where they were kind of like dating coaches, but it's also like confidence coaches, but also owning your masculinity and knowing the difference between, I think there's a big debate about what's toxic masculinity and what's just masculinity and what's okay. And I was kind of relearning all of this. Yeah. And one of the great things is when you're being educated, like in life, you can almost think of it back to grade school. So it's okay if you find someone who's really flawed logic, because if you're a university student, what you would learn in grade 1 is very flawed math. Yeah. Right. But now, as you are getting to where you are, you needed those building blocks to build up. Right. So I started out with this very basic, a lot of wrong ideas, but it was giving me the right ideas.
Right.
And then I found a YouTuber called Elliot Hulse, and he is a Black man from the south of the United States. And he talked a lot about like owning who he was and being very mindful and being thoughtful and being appreciative and kind of being spiritual in a non-religious way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, like this is good. And it got more applicable to me. And then I started getting into more people and different people.
Like what you've done is really impressive.
Yeah, I moved out at a young age. I moved to the city at 13 for private school.
Oh,
It was a boarding situation, but unfortunately, the boarding situation was less than ideal. The person who was in charge of a residence wasn't the nicest. I ended up missing a day of school because I refused to eat his disgusting egg flavored tofu, and he locked me in my room.
Oh my God.
I had to call my parents and be like, "Yeah, Walter locked me in my room. I missed school today."
Oh,
So they said, fuck that, you're not staying there anymore, and they end up buying a investment condo. And it's funny, after 4 years of living there, when they went to flip it, it paid for my whole education. So
that's amazing.
so that's fantastic.
Perfect synchronicity.
So that, just moving out so young at that age, and with hockey, you're always dealing with billet families, and then going to Sweden so young, when you've had to do so many different careers, so many different kind of professions, and explore yourself so much, but in a way that's so independent. Because a lot of people, they grow up in a small town, let's say, and from kindergarten to high school, and then even to some extent, people go to their local college. So you've really been formed by your peers and by your community. I didn't have this long-term group of peers or community. I have friends from my childhood, but I didn't get to see them every day because, I've lived in British Columbia. I've lived in New Brunswick. I played hockey in all of the Northeast. I've lived in Sweden. I was been like all over. And then from the different things that I was doing, I was a big drama kid.
Really?
I was the lead in musical theater for years. I had to choose actually between my private school or a different one that was focused on musical theater performance art. My family, we all acted, we did background work, but I was really big into acting and theater and performance. It's a whole different group.
You have lived
than your
a lot
traditional
of lives.
jocks. Yeah, I played quad A volleyball. I was a track and field guy. I was on the cross country team. And then, going from Toronto to the big city, to the small towns, to, the mountain kind of culture, to Europe, it's like you start becoming a little piece of everywhere that you came from.
Yeah.
It's like, the Port Perry Fair, where I'm from, is going to be happening soon. So I kind of almost imagine it's if you're a quilt, right? The quilters all get together and they tie this all together, and it's a piece of each of them.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I try to approach life. Is every place that I go, I try to take a piece of that for the quilt that is me, which is super corny and lame.
That's cute, though. I like that.
I think it's a really good way to honor who you are and who you've been and who you're becoming. And really, it allows you to appreciate all the people that have had a hand in sculpting you and making you into the person that you are.
Because it's completely about the journey. That's the spice of life, really. And I think with that much moving and instability, really, it could have been the opposite for you. You could have just felt like a nomad and you're connected nowhere. And it's really hard to invest in yourself when you have nowhere to call home. I went through that.
There is definitely this sense of it's like that Orwellian double think where you can believe two very different things at the same time. Because don't get me wrong, there were definitely times when I was playing in Sweden, I felt totally isolated. I had friends, but they weren't my best friends, right? So moving that much, it can get lonely, and you can definitely butt heads with people. I think it's one of these things, in retrospect, you look back at it much more fondly because you're like, oh shit, I actually learned a lot from that experience. And in the moment, you just only really feel the struggle of it. So, if there's anyone who's going through something similar and they're kind of like, well, this doesn't, his story, my story, I feel so isolated. I'm moving and work's taking me all these places. My education's taking me different places and I'm having a hard time dealing with it. I don't want someone to think that it wasn't difficult for me too. It absolutely was. But I guess the nice thing is there is the light at the end of the tunnel, because give it 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 years, you're going to look back and be like, it all makes sense. The puzzle pieces all fit together.
Totally. And you touched a little bit on, you had to either pull back or you'd stop drinking. Are you still not drinking?
Very rarely. I don't drink casually anymore, really whatsoever. The only time I'll have a casual drink, but for me, it's more of an event drink, is if I go to wine country.
Okay.
The one thing I've really noticed is people will really force you or try to force you to drink, even if you tell them that you are sober. There is very few people who respect it.
Non-alcoholic.
Look at you. There you go.
I don't drink anymore.
Yeah. That's what I like about, what's that one water brand that Tony Hawk is in with?
Oh, Liquid Death?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Great marketing.
Well, because I've had it a few times at parties, because when you're holding it looks like an IPA, like it looks like some indie brand. Nobody questions it. So most of the time when I go out to a nice dinner with friends, I order a Shirley Temple. And I'm always like, since I'm an adult man, I will get a Shirley Temple. And then
I do love a Shirley Temple.
I love a Shirley Temple.
So good.
We always had grenadine at my house growing up because like my mom's obsessed with Shirley Temples too. And then it's so funny, right? Because like I'm pretty big guy. I've been cutting down a bit. I'm 225. This is small for me, but like I'm usually like right 240. Wow. And then seeing like a 6'3", 240 guy have like and people have such a problem with it too. They're like, man, you can't drink that. And I'm like, are you going to stop me from drinking it? I don't understand what you can't drink that means, because there's a straw and I'm sucking, it's going into my mouth. So like, well,
are you threatening me?
Yeah, I'm like, do we need to go outside?
Could you imagine if that was the threshold? Like, got in a fucking fight last night. I can't believe it. Shirley Temple.
Like, and actually this leads to something that I think is really interesting. So I'm trying to be a good ally to the LGBTQ plus community. Mm-hmm. I have some very close friends that are gay and that are trans, and I've seen the issues that they've had to go through with. Yeah. And a lot of people think homophobia is dead in this country. And from what I've witnessed, it just isn't. And I'll give you a couple examples. So one of them is fruity drinks. People be like, there's this, they will never say, don't do it, it's gay. But mm-hmm. that's what's been beat into them by the previous generation. The other thing, skinny jeans. I'm a big dude. I have tree trunk legs. There is no jean that I can buy that will not fit tight on my thigh if it is going to fit my waist properly.
Right, I get it.
And you see people, I get it. People be like, man, like your pants, they're so tight, like da-da-da. And I'm like, first of all, why are you commenting on it? That's just weird, right? Second of all, women can walk around in spandex pants all they want. We don't bat an eye at it. You do realize that what you're doing is homophobic. Well, no, it isn't. I'm like, no, you have very deeply suppressed homophobic issues that you are bringing out, because what's the issue with tight pants?
Yeah. And why do you care?
Yeah, because like I'm a fashion boy. Like I want to wear leather pants. I've been looking for the perfect pair of black leather pants, and a lot of people are like, "You like that's gay," and I'm like, first of all, who cares? Because hey, you got to be an alpha male if other men want to have sex with you. That's just my opinion. If both men and women want to have sex with you, you're doing something perfectly right.
Agreed.
Because that means the majority of the people want to have sex with you. But if only men or only women want to have sex with you, that's the minority of the population.
You've given me a new challenge. I like this.
Yeah, it's like, am I personally interested in it? No, but it's like, is there anything wrong with it? No, of course not. So
you really did hit on something though.
Yeah, I'll go with my friends on Church Street, and for those of you who aren't from Toronto, that's like the gay district. And it's like, you want to, first of all, you want to have a confidence boost and you want to have a good time. Go to a gay bar as a guy. If you're a guy and you think that you are unattractive, go to a gay bar, have a couple drinks bought for you, and you're like, I understand how pretty girls feel now.
I am a pretty girl.
Yeah, it's right. So I'm like, I am now the pretty girl. I'm the belle of the ball.
Yeah. Also, I only go out on Church and Wellesley. Like, I don't see the point. Well, if I seldom go out, but like, yes, that is the place to go and have fun and get a confidence boost or not get bothered. It's like the LGBT community knows how to party and they know how to mind their fucking business. Not like Cabana Bar, which I've never been to, which just sounds like my idea of
you don't need to go.
Hell. What? No, I can't go. I'll never. I no. I feel like
the issue is you go out to most bottle service nightclubs.
Yeah.
It's pretentious. It's just a bunch of drug dealers. No one wants to talk. Everyone just goes to be seen. Girls dress very pretty. They don't want to be approached. They just want to be around bottle service, and it's this lifestyle thing where everyone is pretending to have a good time and no one is. But you go out on Church Street, everyone's actually just having a good time.
Right.
Little bit too much drug culture for me on
Yes.
Church Street.
Yeah.
I don't participate. If you stay away from it, I don't care what you do. It's
Yeah.
not my life. You do
I
whatever
go
you
sober,
want.
so I get it. Like,
Exactly.
but-
Exactly. But I'm like, yeah, no, it's always a good time.
Okay.
Because who doesn't love a good drag show?
Cruising tangos only. Cruising tangos only. I only want to watch the drag show, get really excited about all the Lady Gaga and Madonna, and then go upstairs and dance like no one fucking is watching because
I'm a big
probably are.
RuPaul guy, and most people are very surprised. I've seen every season. I watch All Stars, and like I'm like,
I think
Mama
we
Ru
just became
taught me so
best-
much. You want to talk about mentors? Mama Ru, love
Oh
yourself.
my God, don't even. Because if you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love anybody else? Can I
get an amen?
Did we just become best friends?
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. So much room for activities. Amazing.
I think a lot more guys need to watch RuPaul's Drag Race.
I think that right there, that is the fucking reel for this episode.
Yeah, but I was watching this reel on Instagram, and there was a guy, and he made a fantastic point. He's like, if you want to be a truly happy and successful man, you can be masculine and aggressive and passionate, but you can also be soft and loving and patient and nurturing and feminine. Being just this or just that is not balanced. There is no yin, there is no yang. It's chaos.
Yeah.
If you have both pieces, the scales will weigh out.
Yeah.
So it's like, will I embrace my large size and my tattoos and my beard and my drive and my passion? Absolutely. But am I going to, like I still have my childhood teddy bear. I'm not going to throw it away because people say that's immature or feminine or childish. It makes me happy. I don't cuddle it every night, but I still have them when I
still
have
have
kids.
my childhood teddy bear, and it's still on my bed. It's 36 years old. It's sad looking though.
I send my mom pictures of cute puppies all day, and like I watch like the little cute like Japanese cartoon reels of like the little animated characters that are like for toddlers. Rilakama is like this big Japanese like teddy bear, and he's got a Netflix show where he goes to a theme park. I've watched 4 of the episodes. It's adorable. I'm sorry that I like cute things.
You are this weird dichotomy. I didn't judge a book by its cover, but you are not at all the way I thought you were going to be. So this is actually an excellent segue for my next favorite topic because I am living it. Are you dating? Are you single? Are you in a relationship?
So I have a very interesting policy on discussing these things, and this will take me down a rabbit hole. I refuse. So I've had a couple of stalkers actually. In the past.
Same. High five.
Yes, and I've had to get the police involved on more than one occasion, unfortunately. And I've had in the past when I've been dating people that those people make fake accounts, and I won't even tag them. I'll put them like from the chin down in a dinner thing, and they will go through my friends list. They'll go through my following, and they've DM people and been very manipulative. So I have a policy. If I am single, if I am with someone, if I am married, at this point, I can't even discuss it because
fair.
It's still a trauma I'm working through, and I know that I have to build back up this kind of trust and understand that it was a rough chapter. But I think what was so difficult for me was it didn't just happen for a month or 6 months or a year or 2 years. It was a few years of, well, how much longer can they do this? And it continued and continued and continued. So it's very stressful whenever I get a no caller ID call. My heart still sinks because that was one of the ways that they would, I don't want to go as far to say as abuse me, but to intimidate me.
Sure.
And so it still gives me a mini anxiety attack. So I that way, if I'm in a relationship or not, I always tell people the same answer. It's just something I can't even talk about anymore.
is perfectly fine. And thank you for being so honest about it. Because
Of
holy
course. No,
fuck.
I'm sorry. I wish I could. I wish I
No,
could
that's
elaborate into
okay.
it.
I
Yeah.
have like a million things I could talk about that's better. It's just I'm living this life of I never did dating apps my entire life. I just
Yes.
kept trying to marry everybody in my 20s. That didn't work out well. I'm twice divorced. I just like I feel like I came out of this cave and here I am on dating apps and it is fucking nightmare. It doesn't make any sense.
It's hellacious.
It's yeah, to say the least. So I was just wondering if you had any nightmare stories, but you have already trumped that. So
You know what? But I can definitely talk about the past.
okay.
I won't. I can't talk about the present or the future, but I will talk about the past because. So in hockey, there's certain things that are cultural currency, right? So, for example, what level do you play? That's one of the first and foremost. How many people have you slept with? Unfortunately, is still a big part of that culture.
Right.
And how many Tinder or Hinge matches you have. So, unfortunately, when I was much younger, I gave into a lot of these much more toxic and volatile parts of masculinity of women are a trophy to be won and not people to be respected,
Right.
which seems so obvious. But when you're in a culture of people and that's what's propagated and to be popular or cool or to be perceived that way by your peers, that's the currency that they're after. That's the currency that you go and mint for yourself. I had, I think, 10,000 Tinder matches
Oh my God.
as a guy. And, you know,
Wow.
I think it's interesting because I have a lot of friends that I deem to be tremendously much more handsome than myself.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I don't think poorly of myself. I don't think overly highly of myself. I'm me. And I think that meeting people that get to know me, whether they like me or not, that's for them to judge. But I like myself. The issue is I find a lot of guys' dating profiles suck because guys still know that I had a lot of success on dating apps.
Okay.
From modeling, I'd like so many modeling pictures. I got pictures from when I was modeling for Armani and Diesel. And I was an underwear model, for Christ's sake.
Okay. Wow.
Right. So it's like,
Just...
right. So it was very easy.
Yeah.
And then when your profile says pro athlete and there's pictures of you playing pro athletics, and then I like back then because I was on a reality series in Italy. And I was doing all this other stuff. So I used to have like 100K followers.
Wow.
And then I took like a 2 or 3 year break from Instagram because I just couldn't deal with the toxicity and
Sure.
it was giving me kind of body dysmorphia. I was following these accounts that I thought were motivating me, but they just made me feel like shit about myself.
Jesus.
Yeah, social media can be so toxic.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people just don't know how to present the best side of themselves in an authentic way.
Yeah.
You know, luckily I just had those kind of check marks and those boxes that the average person might be looking for because to them it was kind of like this fantasy.
Yeah.
Like I can't tell you the amount of times that I would match with girls who were in relationships where I'd match with them, they'd be in a relationship and they'd still be messaging me and I would catch them and I would be like, why would you do this? And like, well, like you're a hockey player. It was the fantasy. It didn't even feel real. I felt like you were out of my league. And I certainly never felt that way about anyone. I don't think I'm better than anyone. I certainly don't think I'm worse than anyone. I'd like to see people as peers and see them as equals. But I think there was this one summer that it was like particularly bad where I had like 10 or 12 different instances where I had caught women who were talking to someone, with someone, dating someone, beginning a relationship or in a long-term relationship that I'm like, I got you. And that wasn't great.
I feel like you're having, or you've had this like reverse sexism experience. Like, I feel like that is so the norm for women as a single woman to experience dating apps or just social media as a whole, where you're getting approached and guys are putting in the work to basically court you and they're actually in relationships or are in I don't know, it seems really odd like that you've went through that, but I guess I don't know what it is to be a pro hockey player and to have been an underwear model, and like, I mean, it's not just checking the boxes, like you're doing above and beyond. So I imagine that was a lot of fantasy, and must have been actually quite odd to not have any connection with people because they were just after what they thought you were, and they probably had no intention to really get to know you. It was just you.
Yeah, people are often surprised when they speak to me for a little while. And don't get me wrong, like I
Pleasantly
totally
so,
embraced, though. Yeah, and I totally embraced it, right? Like, but I also just knew what the superficial and vain audience that exists in Toronto and many other places were looking for. Like, you know, I have the nice little Porsche sports car, so I have the picture of me in that, and you know, and I had the Range Rover blacked out, so you know, okay, got to toss that up in there, and
you know, every girl that lives on King Street, panties on the floor,
basically, right? So it just was.
Yeah,
I just chose to put that image out there. I could have put things that were maybe more reflective of who I actually was, because you know, it's definitely my contribution. I was very aware of what I was doing, but it was successful, and at the time I was always open-minded to finding a long-term partner, and I did a lot of dating, long-term dating even, but I had very negative relationships. My first relationship really put me in a bad place. I was 17 and she cheated with like 6-7 different guys.
Wow.
I grew up in a place and in a family where you are supposed to be abstinent and get married and have children. That's your only partner.
Right.
So for me, that first girlfriend was, oh, I'm going to marry you.
Right.
And that was a huge wake-up call. I went from being a kid who was naive, and that was reality smacking me across the face.
Right.
The right term. I don't want to smudge anyone's name, but I've unfortunately been in a couple of relationships where my partner was physically, emotionally, and verbally abusive to myself. I think a lot of times men don't want to talk about the abuse that they do receive. I'm a big guy, and I've been hit by more than one partner. I think that once you hit a certain size as a man, women think, well, I can't hurt you, so what's the issue with me laying hands on you? Which is obviously incredibly toxic, and we're in our early 20s, and I'm not going to make an excuse for abuse, and I don't think anyone who's out there who's listening who's experiencing abuse, do not make excuses for your abuser. No. Because I am so big and because I can defend myself, I said, well, you're just being soft, you know, don't complain about it. It's not a big deal. Like, did it hurt? But it hurt emotionally.
Sure.
And, you know, and whether it was me not having enough self-respect or self-worth, or me not wanting to be seen as dramatic or, you know, the boy who cried wolf, I kept it in for a very, very long time. But it's definitely something that I haven't accepted and won't accept anymore. And I think that it's much more common than people think. I refuse to yell at people, whether it's a friend, a partner, a family member. And if I do yell at someone, it's never for more than a handful of seconds. And then I calm down and said, hey, you know, I raised my voice. That's my bad. Like, we can talk about this, because I find I don't really fight people anymore unless it's on the ice.
Yeah.
because
in a healthy, controlled manner.
Most people are reasonable.
Sure.
Right. And I think the number one thing that causes fights is, let's say that we have two very different opinions on something that's controversial. Let's say, you know, and this isn't how I feel whatsoever. I'm very pro women's sports, but let's say I'm anti women's sports professionally and you're pro women's sports. The best way that I find to deal with anyone that you disagree with is not to say, well, you're an idiot. It's to say, hey, I can understand how you could come to that conclusion, and agree with someone, because at the end of the day, whether we like to admit it or not, most things we disagree with people on aren't as serious as Nazis are great or Nazis are evil. Most things are pretty mundane.
Yeah.
Like, you asshole, why didn't you fill the dishwasher?
Yeah.
Right. That's more so the realm of things I'm talking about. And it's like, you know, I think we can give each other a little bit more grace and say, you know what, that was stupid. I should have done it. I didn't do it because I've been really depressed. I've been feeling really down with work. And it's the last thing I want to do with my day. And it's just saying, you asshole. You can say, well, you know what? I can understand that. I'd really appreciate if you do it. But you know what? If you need some help, let me know.
Yeah.
I used to be the person just be like, fuck off, fuck you, eat shit, you know, get off my fucking back. If you tell me to do something, I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
But making these small changes, I don't get in nearly as many fights. I used to get a bar fight every time I went out to the bar. I used to get kicked out of 2 or 3 places in a night.
I mean, but you know what, too, to touch on that, like, that's something I had to deal with in my life was, you know, not being such a hothead and dealing with anger, and then realizing that actually anger is not a real emotion. Anger is just a front for actually feeling emotionally hurt and vulnerable, and not having the confidence and the, self-awareness to be, to just say, well, I don't agree with that because it makes me feel some sort of way, or I'm mad at you and I'm telling you to fuck off because really I'm hurt and I just want to hug. Like, that's really hard to say.
It is. And, especially making that transition from confrontation to resolution is extremely difficult. Like, I had dated in the past and tried to implement better systems of talking and communicating, and they failed miserably. And sometimes you also have to realize in certain situations you can give all the patience, all the time, and all the effort, but you also need to be talking to someone who can reciprocate. Like,
absolutely,
I'll comment on an Instagram video, and it's so insane because like people will just go for each other's throats. They don't know each other. They know nothing about each other, and they assume you're saying the worst, most offensive version of how those words can be taken. And then I'm like, society will be significantly better when we teach people, hey, this is what pisses me off about school. Schools need to do a better job of teaching people how to be people.
That's a fucking huge statement right there. Do you have another hour? Okay, go ahead.
So the math that I learned in high school, I don't use any of it really ever. And I develop, like, yes, there are certain things, but not really. Most job skills that you get on the job. Yeah. I talk to people. I didn't go to university. I was accepted to university. I just didn't have at the time the financial resources to go. I was accepted to Yale. I was accepted to U of T. I wanted to be a pediatric oncologist. That was the dream.
Oh, wow.
Ended up very far away from that.
That was a very also specific. Like, tell me you didn't come up with that when you're like fucking 13. You overachiever.
I love kids and I love family. I'm like the 60 something grandchild. We have like 180 people in my family.
Jeez, wow.
My dad's the last of 9. My thought process was always like, so I have Lyme, and I was like quite sick in my youth, and not having answers, not having a good doctor are things that can be very terrifying, especially with something like Lyme. Oh, God. So I kind of thought like, hey, it'd be really cool if I could be a doctor for kids like me that need help. But then I kind of thought to myself, well, what fields of medicine would that encompass? So I kind of had this vision in my head of, working at a place like Sick Kids and seeing kids that are beat down and downtrodden and losing their hair and they have no idea what's going on, and seeing these families trying to cope. But, I think a fairly warm personality. And I think that would have been a place, I'm Christian. I think that's a place where I could have been in good service to families and in good service to God. Just, hey, I build houses. So I guess that's good too.
It's very Christian of you.
but that was the dream at one point, and sometimes I still think to myself like, I'll go back to school when I'm 40.
Yeah,
but realistically, I won't.
Well, I have to thank you and commend you on all your transparency and your vulnerability. And one of the reasons I started this podcast is to have a platform to talk about mental health, normalize it. My traumas, my guest traumas, and even if it's just one person listening, and knowing that my demographic listening audience is 85, 90% male, the fact that you were sharing these stories that primarily wouldn't be my guests, thank you. I really do appreciate it, because I know that's not easy to talk about. Yeah, abuse is not talked about when it's woman against men, especially a man your size. So I do appreciate that.
No, thank you for letting me come on and having a platform. I always enjoy discussing. I think I've done some interesting things, and people seem to usually be entertained by it.
Totally.
So, I'm always happy to share my story.
All right, I'll admit when I'm wrong. Jesse Michel is really different than I thought he was going to be. My intentions having him on the show was going to be like a funny bantering about dating life and how he's this like really good looking red flag who's going to have all the stories and all the ladies, and he proved me completely wrong. And as someone who believes himself to be, quite spiritually aligned and, embracing people for living their most authentic life, Jesse is that. He truly is his own snowflake. He's a lovely individual. He's extremely intelligent and funny, but he's also equal parts grounded and really in his power of being both very masculine. He's a professional athlete. He's in the real estate business, which is usually extremely saturated by men, but he's also really in touch with his feminine side, and I think that should be celebrated. It should also be celebrated how intimate he was in sharing his struggles with being quite a macho masculine man. Oh boy, it's been a long day, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm not going to edit this out because this is the realness. As someone who is quite masculine and comfortable in his masculinity and his femininity, he shared his struggles with experienced physical abuse and violence in a relationship. And that's not something that we come across a lot in 2022. And I'm really glad that Wilde On has been the platform to bring a lot of these new innovative things to you, my listening audience, my wild ones. Again, I hope you enjoy all the wacky, wild, wonderful content that Wilde On brings you weekly, because you know what? I'm having a fucking blast. And Wilde On really gives me a reason to get up in the morning and to continue being the best version of myself and sharing with all of you how I've stepped into my power and how I'm living my most authentic, most divine, highest version of myself. And I wouldn't be able to do all that if it wasn't for my badass punk rock girl band, the Wilde On team. My right-hand woman, my queen, the woman who keeps me grounded and has pushed me to grow in my own regard. Editor and producer, Rochelle Douris, the woman who does all the things on the internet that I don't understand and all the things in marketing that I desperately need. Our beautiful marketing specialist, Madison Golshani, and our sweet baby angel who sings the Wilde On theme. She does all the things that we need help with all together and collectively, and she's in training, Sam Smith. And until next week, stay calm, keep calm, and Wilde On.